Hello, I'm Allison Charney, and this is Preformance's Season of Hope. In this series of concert and conversation with some of today's most sought-after classical musicians, we explore the theme of hope while offering Preformance's signature ungoogleable insights into the music we make, all of which is made meaningful because of you, our audience. On this sixth episode of Season of Hope, we focus our musical attention on the momentous occasions of two anniversaries. This month, 55 years ago, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was signed into law, and today, August 18th, 2020, marks 100 years to the day of the ratification of the 19th Amendment granting women the right to vote. We were thrilled to be featured today in the 19th, a new nonprofit news organization dedicated to women and politics that takes its name, of course, from the 19th Amendment. You can find out more about centennial programming going on throughout the country on our website, www.preformances.org, including that of one of our wonderful partners for tonight's show, the National Women's History Museum. I would like to welcome to Preformance's Season of Hope, pianist Donna Weng Friedman. Welcome, Donna.
Hey, Allison. Thank you so much for inviting me. By the way, I love this series and really appreciate the fact that you put in so much work and effort to give musicians the opportunity to share their music and to have audiences come and love music together. Thanks so much, Allison.
Thank you, Donna. I have to say I've really enjoyed doing the watching these premieres on Facebook and YouTube because you're always there. I always see Donna Weng Friedman. So it's nice to know you're with me all the time.
Yep, super fan.
Well, the feeling is mutual. As you know, I have you on Preformances every year since I've known you, which feels like that should be 100 years.
And it's only been 2.
I know, it's so weird. We have made so much music together in such a short time.
We hit it off right away. We had lunch, and then I just started telling you things that I never tell anyone naturally because you were so open and so passionate about the same things that I'm passionate about. And I told you about my female crush, right? Clara Schumann.
Everybody had a crush on Clara Schumann.
I've been obsessed with her since I was in high school, and reading all the biographies of Johannes Brahms and Robert Schumann, because there were none that I could find about Clara, but, those two great romantic composers, they wrote everything for her. And I was thinking, my God, what kind of woman is this that these two incredible geniuses were throwing music at her so that she could play?
And I think it's really great that we are talking about your love of Clara Schumann, and we're going to hear a beautiful Clara Schumann piece today, the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, granting women the right to vote. Because Clara Schumann herself was such, I hate to use a pun, an instrumental woman in music history.
Yeah, she was a trailblazer, truly. And what I love about her music is that because she was a pianist, it just flows so beautifully. It's right in the fingers because, as I said, she was a great pianist.
Donna, one sec. I want to ask you a question about that phrase, that's right in the fingers. I realize that for you, that is a perfectly everyday thing to say. But what does that mean, that something's in your fingers?
In the fingers means that literally, naturally, I can play without working at it so much. It is just so easy because she understood the keyboard. She understood the way our fingers are, we're not cut across like that. We have, the middle finger is taller, so it fits in certain keys better. For instance, if you played a C major scale or a piece in C major, right, without flats or sharps, without the black keys, it doesn't fit as well. And interestingly enough, even though C major scale has no sharps and flats, it's one of the hardest, most difficult scales to play fluidly and fast because there is no rise for your longer fingers. So in this particular piece, we have, beautiful flowing passages that really fit the fingers.
Before you hear just how beautifully this fits Donna's hands, I want to take a moment to thank the Women's Suffrage Centennial Commission for recognizing tonight's episode. This commission was formed by Congress to ensure that we as a nation suitably observe the occasion of the centennial in a bill sponsored by Senator Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin and then co-sponsored by every female member of the Senate. We at Performances couldn't imagine a better composer to observe the centennial with than Clara Schumann, whose turbulently romantic song Ist gekommen, performed by me, soprano Allison Charney, and pianist Donna Weng Friedman, we'll hear now.
Ist gekommen, in Sturm und Regen, im Schlummer genommen, mein Herz entgegen. Wie kommt ich ahnen, dass seine Bahnen sich einen solchen meinen pflegen? Ist gekommen, im Sturm und Regen, hat genommen, mein Herz verlegen. Nahm das meine, nahm ich das seine, die beiden kamen sich entgegen. Ist gekommen, Sturm und Regen, ist gekommen, Sturm und Regen. Nun ist gekommen des Frühlingssegen, der freut sich weiter, ich seh es heiter, denn bleibt mein auf allen Wegen, denn bleibt mein auf allen Wegen. Nun ist gekommen des Frühlingssegen, der freut sich weiter, ich seh es heiter, denn bleibt mein auf allen Wegen.
And that was Clara Schumann's Ist gekommen. Now, Donna, we're going to have a couple of pieces that you're going to play solo. I get to sing with you again a little bit later. But first, I'd love to talk about this piece that you're going to play by a living composer whose music I actually just recently sang for the first time. And her name is Beata Moon.
As you know, I spent a lot of time, especially the last couple of months, surfing YouTube, listening and searching for beautiful new music. And so I came across this beautiful gem of a piano piece, a solo piano, simply called Prelude. And something about this piece touched me so deeply. I felt a real connection to it. So I looked at the name of the composer, as you said, was Beata Moon. And, you know, she and I studied with Adele Marcus, the same teacher at the Juilliard School, you know, years and years ago. But back then she was a pianist. You know, she actually had to take a break from piano to find her true voice, her real passion, and that was in composition. And this prelude that I fell in love with, that I'm about to play for you, was her very first solo piano piece. And she told me that it gave voice to her inner child who was afraid to express herself before. The form of this gem of a piece is what we call A, B, A. So A is the first section where the first theme is presented. In part B, you have a contrasting section. When it returns to part A, the theme comes back and the notes are the same, but the feeling is much more peaceful, quiet, and there's inner joy and contentment.
One of the things I love about an ABA structure, which is so classic its form, is that those two A sections, although the same in many ways, the second time the A theme comes back, it is informed by the B, right? So the first time you hear it, it's sort of I don't know, it's almost the innocent version, right? And then the untouched version, and then comes the life of B.
Right.
And you can't then go back to part A forgetting about part B. So the life that you've lived in that middle section so deeply informs the ending, which then circles back to the beginning.
Right.
I've always
and in the last part A, in many pieces, this is a very standard form. Composers use it all the time. And when I come back to a part A in the third last section, to me, sometimes it reminds me of the first part A, and it's like a memory in a way. So
even though this piece is only 4 minutes long, we don't want to scare people off, but but as musicians, we can have a memory of the first minute of the piece only 3 minutes later, and hopefully you as listeners will hear that too. And perhaps it then evokes other memories, because as a performer, what you're thinking and what you're feeling is not necessarily what you even hope that the audience thinks or feels. You just hope that they do think and feel.
Yeah, and we as performers, we tell our story the way we feel it, but the music, what's so beautiful about classical music is that it opens up to the audience. It enables you to tell your story.
As we think about storytelling, I want to be sure to mention that the Schlesinger Library at the Radcliffe Institute is creating a digital archive of this year of 19th Amendment centennial celebrations, so all the stories that are told will be preserved for history, including this broadcast, which we hope will be included in their archives. And now we hear pianist Donna Weng Friedman tell Beata Moon's story in her beautiful Prelude. And that was Prelude by Beata Moon, performed beautifully by pianist Donna Weng Friedman. So Donna, we are celebrating together the 100th, the centennial of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, and also the 55th anniversary of the signing into law by Lyndon Johnson of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And we are focusing, therefore, on a lot of music by women composers, especially because you and I together created a different series called Her Music, Her Story, which focuses on the life and music of great women composers, past and present. But right now, we're going to veer a little bit away from the celebration of women and revert to the theme of this whole series, Season of Hope. I'm asking all of my guests to talk just a little bit about, you know, what they're hopeful about, what they're hoping for. And when I mentioned that to you, the first piece that came to your mind was this beautiful piece by Chopin. I was wondering if you could talk to me just a little bit about how this fits with the theme of hope in your life.
So when I was 11 or 12, I was learning this beautiful Chopin piece, my first piece by Chopin. My father came home from work and he stopped for a few seconds. Then he ran into the kitchen and he pulls out my mom and they start dancing. They start waltzing around the living room. And then my dad said to me, and he said, you know, this piece is very special to me. And he asked me who wrote it, and I told him. And then he told me his story. He came to this country in the 1940s. He was able to save enough money after the first couple of weeks to buy himself a very special gift. He bought himself a radio. And every night when he came home from work, he would turn on the radio. And he told me he remembered hearing this piece. He didn't know who wrote it, but he knows that that was the piece he heard because my father had perfect pitch. Anyway, so he remembered that piece and he loved that piece so much back then. So on that evening, when I was 11, 12 years old, when he came home and he heard me playing that piece gave him hope all those years ago. And hearing me play that piece, his daughter, he felt that all of his hopes and dreams had come true. I think this is where, you know, Chopin gives us one of the most songful melodies of a lifetime. I also like to bring out some inner voices that are hidden in the left hand.
In other words, on the piano, as you can imagine, there are so many notes being played at any one time. So it's not only a horizontal melody that goes from beginning to end, but there's also a lot of verticals going on, right? There's multiple notes happening at the same time. And only one of those notes at any given time is the melody line. And all the other notes have varying levels of importance, and that's really up to the individual performer to find and feel and understand. And maybe the melody line is also buried deep within the verticality, right? It might not be the top note. And we say all of this not because we expect you as the listener to exactly hear, you know, you don't have to feel pressure that now you have to notice what those notes are. But the point is that if the performer is bringing out certain notes, they're telling you a certain story, and they're just giving you a more organized way of listening, of framing. They're framing your listening experience.
I actually heard this played by the one and only Arthur Rubinstein at Carnegie Hall. He was one of the greatest Chopin players that ever lived. And my mother took me to this concert. He played this piece. And he played this inner voice that I'd never heard before at the very end. And so this is a tribute to Arthur Rubinstein.
So to Arthur Rubinstein and to Donna's parents, Chopin's Waltz in C sharp minor, performed by Donna Weng Friedman. And that was Donna Weng Friedman's glorious performance of Chopin's Waltz in C-sharp minor, such a moving tribute to her parents. Before we talk about our next piece, I wanted to let you know about the marvelous centennial programming at two of my alma maters, at Harvard University through the Women and Public Policy program at the Kennedy Center, and at Johns Hopkins, whose programming will continue through the November election in a noble effort that I join to encourage us all to exercise our precious right to vote. So, Donna, I am excited for our next piece by Florence Price because for both of us, this is a new piece in our repertoire.
Yes, and it is a magical piece. Now, for those of you who don't know who Florence Price was, she was the first African-American female composer to have her symphony performed by a major orchestra, and that was the Chicago Symphony.
It's particularly this month when we're celebrating so much of what has given women an equal voice in our society, both the ratification of the 19th Amendment and also the signing into law of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that really afforded African-American women also the same opportunity to cast their vote as white women have been experiencing. It just seems so important, even more important, to expose ourselves and our audience to music written by women that maybe have not been given so much airtime. I think when you hear this piece, you will wonder, as we did, why? Because this is as beautiful a piece as I've ever sung. It's the setting, her attention to the text in particular, I find so deeply, deeply moving.
In this piece, there's this incredible glowy kind of warmth that emanates. And it's from the harmony, the harmonic progressions, when we were trying to figure out what key we were going to perform this in. And it was between D major and E flat major. And I don't know what it is about the sharp keys, which is a D major. I always feel like that's a brighter key. And the E flat major, which are the flat keys, are a warmer tone for me.
Okay, well, I think we should go into this world that Florence Price has created. And for our first time together, we, Allison Charney soprano and Donna Weng Friedman pianist, will play for you Night by Florence Price.
Shadow
And that was Night by Florence Price, performed by me, soprano Allison Charney, and pianist Donna Weng Friedman, who is my special guest tonight. Our thanks to the 2020 Women's Vote Centennial Initiative, a collaboration of 50 groups representing segments of the historical suffrage movement and contemporary women's organizations, for listing tonight's program on their calendar of all the commemorative activities around the country leading up to today's 100th anniversary. Let's talk about women's suffrage. Let's talk about the centennial of the ratification of the 19th Amendment. Let's talk about the 55th anniversary of the signing into law of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And let's talk about Ethel Smyth, the fabulous composer who composed the anthem of the suffrage movement. And then let's talk about this unbelievable ensemble of women we have gathered to help us celebrate. That's a lot. That's a mouthful.
So excited. Now, for those of you who don't know who Ethel Smyth was, she was a 20th century British composer and a champion of women's rights and women composers. And in 1912, she was arrested in London along with 100 other suffragettes for throwing stones at the houses of suffrage opponents.
I love that image of her going to jail, of knocking out a window in somebody's house.
Absolutely.
In jail with Emmeline Pankhurst, one of the great leaders of the suffrage movement.
And while she was in the Holloway prison, Smyth led a group of women in a rousing rendition of her anthem, the March of Women, conducting them from a window, because I think she was, imprisoned high up. She leaned out of her window, and I love this imagery, and she conducted them with a toothbrush. And that was probably the most famous performance of that song ever.
Well, I don't know. We don't have a toothbrush, but I think that
what do you mean we don't have a toothbrush?
All right. But in the performance, but we certainly have assembled, I would venture to say, the most impressive group of women ever to sing this piece together and to play this piece together.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about who we have joining us. So Donna Weng Friedman will be playing the piano, and the amazing cellist Soo Bae is playing the cello. We also have this incredible cup runneth over situation of a chorus that I am pinching myself when I realize I'm a part of. We have me, Allison Charney, Layna Chiankas, Yunah, Indira Mahajan, Krysty Swann, and Maria Zifchak. Never before has a group such as this come together to sing an ensemble piece such as this, which should, I hope, show people just how passionately we all feel about the road paving that these great women 100 years ago did for us and for society as a whole. What a remarkable thing that they did, and how, I don't know, I'm speaking for you, Donna, but I think you feel the same way that I do, that we just feel so lucky to be able to make this piece happen.
Absolutely. And to be able to perform this even virtually with these incredible musicians from all over the place. Under normal circumstances, we probably wouldn't be able to get this incredible group of singers together on one stage.
Definitely, we can thank this virtual format for allowing us to assemble this extraordinary group of women, making this extraordinary song come to life by the great Dame Ethel Smyth, in honor and celebration of women's right to vote in this centennial year of the ratification of the 19th Amendment and the 55th anniversary of the signing into law of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And before we get to this song, I want to take a moment to thank you, Donna, for being with me for this most celebratory episode of Season of Hope.
Thank you, Allison, for having me on your show.
And now, with no further ado, the culmination of our centennial celebration at Preformance's Season of Hope, I turn the introduction of this song over to a very special guest.
Hi, I'm New York Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul. 100 years ago today, our nation finally extended to women the most fundamental right in our democracy, the right to vote. New York is proud to be the birthplace of the women's rights movement, and we're proud to be celebrating the anniversary this year. Tonight, I'm pleased to introduce this musical tribute. It is a new arrangement of Ethel Smyth's anthem of the suffrage movement, The March of the Women. It features an ensemble of some of today's most celebrated women, classical musicians, many of whom are New York-based. And it's presented by a New York-based series, Performances with Allison Charney, Season of Hope, in conjunction with Her Music, Her Story. Although there's still more work to be done, it is critical that we take time to celebrate this historic achievement, standing shoulder to shoulder and friend to friend, as the song urges us to do. Thank you and enjoy.
Shout, shout, on with your song, cry with the wing, for the dawn is breaking. March, march, sing you along, wide goes our banner and hope is waking. Song with its story, dreams with their glory, lo they call, and glad is their word. Loud and louder it swells, thunder of freedom, the voice of the Lord.
What a thrill to have been a part of that amazing rendition of Ethel Smyth's The March of the Women. It is at this point in every performances that I am filled with gratitude, and never more so than right now. My thanks to our incredible March of the Women ensemble, Soo Bae, Layna Chiankas, Yunah, Indira Mahajan, Krysty Swann, Maria Zifchak, and tonight's featured guest artist and my partner in Her Music, Her Story, the brilliant pianist Donna Weng Friedman. To discover more about all the amazing centennial programming going on, including the work of the New York State Women's Suffrage Commission, chaired by our most esteemed special guest, the Lieutenant Governor of the State of New York, Kathy Hochul, I encourage you to visit our website at www.preformances.org, where you can also learn about how you can join our growing list of supporters who help us keep the music playing. And so you don't miss any of our programming, do take a moment to like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and sign up for our mailing list. And now, along with Preformance's official collaborative pianist Craig Ketter, I leave you with our traditional closing song, Zueignung, a 90-second gem by Richard Strauss that is filled with Dank, with thanks. I'm Allison Charney. Habe Dank.
Du weißt es, teure Seele, dass ich fern von dir mich wähle. Lebe macht die Herzen krank. Hab Dank. Einst hielt ich der beschworst